divorcing at 60, and I had to start over financially from scratch. Do you think 60 is too old to start over from scratch? You might think that by the time you reach 60, life is stable and all you need to do is enjoy the remaining years of relaxation. But for me, this was not the case. One day, I suddenly realized I had nothing left. No house, no pension, no assets, only disappointment and fear about the future. When I divorced at 60, I not only lost my partner but also everything I had once thought was stable. My assets, my home, and the retirement plans I had spent years building. I stood on the threshold of change, not knowing what to do. And perhaps you are also wondering, could I be like Linda? Could I stand up and start over from scratch when I'm older? If you were thinking this, I want to share my story with you, because I did it even though things were far from easy in the beginning. Now, looking back, I realized that life after 60 is not the end. It's just a new chapter, full of challenges but also an opportunity to rebuild everything, to start over from scratch. And you can do the same. It's never too late to change, no matter how much you've lost. Perhaps you are asking yourself, how can I start over when it seems too late? How can I rebuild my finances when there's not much time left? But I have realized that the most important thing is not time or age. It's the determination and perseverance to never give up. Things might not be easy, but if I could do it, you can too. You can stand up and start over today. I'm Linda, 60 years old, and my life changed completely in an instant. I used to live in Chicago, a bustling city with a fast pace and cold winter winds sweeping through the streets. I had a stable family, a lovely home, and an ordinary office job that was enough to support us. My life wasn't a fairy tale, but it wasn't too difficult either. For over 30 years, I did my best to maintain the family, care for the kids, and try to build a strong financial foundation for the years ahead. I thought that once the kids grew up, my husband and I could enjoy a relaxed retirement. I imagined living in a small beach house in St. Augustine, with white sand and the ocean waves soothing me every day. That was my dream. A simple, peaceful life after a lifetime of work and giving. But everything changed. When I divorced at 60, I not only lost my partner but also everything I had thought would be the rest of my life. The home I once loved was no longer mine. We divided the assets, and my share wasn't enough to rebuild my life. All the retirement plans I had made suddenly shattered. Like many others, I wasn't prepared for this situation. When I was younger, I always thought, everything will be fine. And I never thought much about saving or investing wisely. I lived day by day instead of building a solid financial foundation for the future. And now, at this age, I had to face the reality that I had nothing except debt and anxiety. Looking back, I truly feel like I've lived my life without really understanding finances or the decisions I should have made earlier. Every time I looked at my bank account, I felt a sense of fear. How could I go on? How could I handle this situation? But I realized one thing. I couldn't just sit there and complain about what was past. I had to stand up, even though it was late, and find a way to start over. No one was going to save me except myself. And that's when I started to realize something important. Whether I'm 60 or 70, if I still have the chance to live, I can still change. I want to share with you my journey of rebuilding my life. It wasn't an easy path, but it was the path I had to take. And if you are in a similar situation, I hope my story will inspire you to start over, no matter what age you are. When everything began to fall apart, I didn't know what to do. One morning, sitting in the empty house I once called home, I felt like I had lost everything. Memories, dreams of a peaceful future after retirement, all shattered like broken glass. I looked out the window and saw the familiar streets of Chicago, but now there was nothing that connected me to them. I suddenly realized that I hadn't just lost my partner, but I had lost the safety, the stability I once thought would last forever. I stood at a crossroads, unprepared. I had clear plans for my life, taking care of the family, saving a little, dreaming of peaceful retirement years. But now, all those plans had turned into useless pieces of paper. My pension wasn't enough, the assets were split, and the house had become the past. I didn't know where to start or how to pick myself up. That feeling was truly uncomfortable. The The fear of the future wasn't just a financial issue, it was the loss of direction in life. I had once been someone who trusted in stability, in work, and in family. But now, everything had changed, and I didn't know how to face these changes. How could I start over from scratch when it seemed too late? This is the question I asked myself every day. I had once thought my life had come to a stop, but now I realized that I couldn't give up. Even though what I had lost was important, I understood that there was one thing left that was most important, myself. And I knew that if I didn't act right now, I would have nothing. I couldn't just sit there and cry over what I had lost. No one was coming to save me. No one but me could change this life. But how could I change when there was not much time left, and everything seemed like it was already too late? I knew one thing for sure. I had to start over even from scratch. But how could I find faith, determination, and the ability to rebuild everything? That was the big question I had to answer. And I want you to understand that, no matter where you are in life, no matter how big your challenges are, you can still change and start again. It's been many weeks since I divorced, but the fear and confusion still haven't gone away. Every morning I wake up, I look in the mirror and ask myself if I can really change my life. Thoughts like, can I do this? Or can I start over from scratch? Keep swirling in my mind. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that if I don't act right now, I will only live in regret and disappointment. One day, while sitting in my old room, I began to ask myself, if not now, when? That's when I realized that nothing could hold me back in fear anymore. Everything I had, everything I once believed in had changed, and I couldn't keep looking back at the past. Those of us who are entering middle age, have getting used to stability. But life doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes we face major shocks, and the only way to move forward is to stand up and keep walking. And that's when I decided not to let loss weigh down my life anymore. I decided to start over even though it might be late, even though it's difficult. I couldn't continue living with that sense of helplessness. I needed to change. And importantly, I couldn't do this alone. I needed to find support and learn things I had never thought of before. Starting over isn't easy. I had to relearn how to manage finances, how to save, how to invest, and most importantly, how to manage my emotions. I couldn't continue living in fear of the future. I had to learn how to take initiative and understand that I can create a new future, regardless of age or circumstances. That was the first step, deciding to change. And although I know the road ahead will not be easy, I understand that this is the only way for me to rediscover myself and rebuild the life I want. Life is not always beautiful and easy, but it can still get better if we dare to face challenges and never give up. The first step is the hardest, but it is also the most important. And I believe that if I can start over from here, you can do the same. Every small step will bring you closer to your goal, and I'm ready to start my journey. When I decided to start over, I realized that rebuilding my life wasn't just an emotional process, but also a real financial challenge. As someone not well versed in finance, I was too accustomed to spending money without thinking carefully. Money came from my stable office job, and I spent it without much concern for savings or long-term investments. Now, standing on the brink of change, I realized I had missed many opportunities over the years. The first issue was money. The house I once lived in no longer belonged to me, and the portion of assets I received wasn't enough to maintain a stable life like before. I had been caught up in the flow of spending without preparing for tomorrow. So what should I do now? I began seeking help. I couldn't continue living in this confusion without understanding finances. I enrolled in personal finance management courses, read books on saving and investing, and sought advice from experienced people. Every day, I spent time learning about index funds, how to budget, and effective saving strategies. Although I wasn't a financial expert, I began to understand that every penny I had was valuable, and if I knew how to manage it, I could rebuild my life. What surprised me was that the more I learned, the more I realized I wasn't too late. Many people start investing late and still succeed. Index funds, an investment option I'd never considered, suddenly became a good fit for my financial situation. I began investing cautiously, learning how to allocate my assets properly. The first steps were small, but I felt like I was gaining control over my future. In addition to investing, I also learned how to change my spending habits. During the first few months, I had to tighten my belt, cutting unnecessary expenses. No more dinners at restaurants, no more buying luxury items. Every penny I earned now had to be spent wisely, because I knew that without a clear financial plan, I would never reach my goal. However, there were times when I felt like I was swimming against the current. Too much information, too many pieces of advice from different experts made me feel exhausted and confused. But I decided not to give up. I learned from small failures, and gradually, I felt like I was starting to take control of my financial situation. Finances are not easy, but I understand that if I want to change my life, I have to start from here. The financial decisions I make now will determine my future, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes so that I never have to face unemployment and financial hardship again. When I started applying what I'd learned about finance, the first steps were really not easy. Everything was new, and sometimes I felt like I was lost in a complicated financial maze. But after taking simple steps like budgeting, cutting expenses, and setting up an emergency fund, I realized that every small decision was leading me toward a big change. Even though the changes were small, I felt like I was getting closer to my goal, financial independence. One of the biggest decisions I made during this time was to start investing in index funds. Before, I knew nothing about index funds and was even hesitant about investing because I thought only rich people could make money from stocks. But when I looked into it more, I realized that index funds are a very suitable financial tool for beginners and people who don't have a lot of money. I opened an investment account, and with each small amount I had, I invested in index funds like the S&P 500. Not every investment decision brought immediate profit, and I didn't expect to become a millionaire right away. However, I realized that every time I invested, I was laying the foundation for future financial stability. 1 month passed, then 3 months, and I began to notice the changes. My first investments started to generate returns, even though they were small, but I felt like I was heading in the right direction. At the same time, I also learned how to save and manage my spending better. I started analyzing all my expenditures and realized that there were many things I had spent money on unnecessarily. For example, I didn't need to eat out every week or subscribe to services I didn't actually use. These changes not only helped me save money but also gave me a sense of control over my life and finances. The first step toward financial independence isn't easy, but it gave me a strong sense of confidence. I no longer felt helpless or worried about the future. Even though the journey ahead is still long, I've already seen the first results from my changes. The money I've invested, the small savings, all of them are important pieces in rebuilding the life I want. The important thing is, I realize that no matter how difficult things get, if I stay persistent and keep learning, I will be able to start over. And now, every day that passes, I feel like I'm getting closer to my dream. A life of financial independence, no longer worrying about money, and not having to depend on anyone else. As life started to get back on track, I realized that there's no easy road. Even though I've begun to see the light at the end of the tunnel, big challenges still keep coming. Life is never simple, and especially when you start over from scratch at the age of 60, difficulties are always lurking. A month after I began my financial rebuilding journey, I faced a major shock, an unexpected expense that I couldn't foresee. Like most people my age, I can no longer work as hard as I used to. The office job has become overwhelming, and I no longer have the stamina to work long hours. Daily living expenses continue, and then one day, I get a notice that my car needs repairs, an expense I hadn't planned for. With my limited savings, I knew I couldn't just ignore it. That was the moment when I felt like everything was falling apart again. But instead of letting worry and stress take over, I decided to face the problem head-on. I reworked my budget and found ways to save more. While it wasn't easy, I started learning how to handle life's surprises without letting them knock me down. There were times when I felt like I couldn't keep going, but I knew I had to push through. What I learned from these challenges was persistence. Not every financial issue could be solved immediately, but I realized that every time I overcame a challenge, I grew stronger. Difficulties are part of life, and rather than avoiding them, I decided to face them calmly and patiently. My journey isn't a sprint. It's a challenging marathon, and I've learned that perseverance is the most important factor for success. There are times when I feel hopeless, but when I look back, I see that every small step has brought me closer to my goal. And more importantly, I've learned that persistence not only helps me rebuild my finances, but also helps me regain my confidence and control over my life. Life will never be simple, but I've learned to face challenges without letting them defeat me. Instead of fearing them, I'm now ready to face and overcome them. And I know that no matter how tough the road ahead may be, I can keep moving forward because I've learned the strength of persistence. After going through the initial financial challenges, I realized that this journey couldn't be done alone. While I had made some progress, I still felt the lack of support. Life after divorce wasn't just missing family companionship, but also lacked the shared understanding from friends or colleagues. I began to realize that if I truly wanted to change and achieve financial independence, I needed to reconnect with the community and seek support from those who had faced similar challenges. First, I turned to online financial support groups where I could engage in discussions about investing, saving, and budgeting. I heard inspiring stories from people who were in the same situation, starting over from scratch later in life, facing financial difficulties, but determined not to give up. These stories not only taught me more financial skills, but also gave me a huge boost of motivation. Every time I felt discouraged, I would remember those who overcame similar hardships and find renewed hope for myself. One of the key lessons I learned from these communities was the importance of seeking professional help. In the past, I always thought I could handle everything on my own and didn't need an expert. But as life became more complex, I realized that sometimes seeking advice from a financial advisor was necessary. I started looking for a reputable advisor to help me realign my financial plan. This helped expand my perspective on investing and saving strategies that I had never considered before. Additionally, I began participating in local community groups, particularly those supporting middle-aged women. The meetups and experience sharing helped me rebuild my self-confidence and showed me that I wasn't alone in this fight. Although each of us had our own issues, we all shared the same goal: to rebuild our lives, achieve financial independence, and not let circumstances or age stand in the way of our dreams. Reconnecting with the community made me realize that strength doesn't come only from within, but also from the people around me. The support and sharing from those in similar situations helped me walk more confidently down this difficult path. I began to feel like I wasn't just changing my finances, but also building a network of friends and allies who would accompany me on the next steps of my journey. This feeling truly marked a turning point in my life. I no longer faced every challenge alone, and this became a major source of motivation to keep moving forward. After months of challenges and efforts, I started to see significant changes in my financial life. Every day, every week, I noticed that I was getting closer to the goal of financial independence I set at the beginning of this journey. But the changes weren't just about money. They were also about how I viewed life and the value of patience and determination. One of the biggest changes I noticed was newfound confidence. I had always worried about money, but now I knew I could control my finances. This confidence didn't come instantly. It was built through each small savings, every small investment, and every correct financial decision. While the amount of money I saved wasn't large, I realized that these small changes were making a big difference. One of the greatest joys throughout this journey was when I received reports on my investments. While it wasn't a huge amount, seeing my account balance increase bit by bit brought me real joy. It was the joy of small victories, the victory over my own worries and the lack of confidence I had before. I understood that every dollar I earned, no matter how small, was a milestone on my journey to building a stable financial future. Another joy was realizing the financial independence I had achieved. No longer having to depend on anyone to cover my basic needs, I felt a lot freer. What's more, I began to plan for my long-term dreams, like buying a small house near the beach in St. Augustine, a place I've always dreamed of. While that goal is still distant, I now feel it's not such a far-fetched dream. Every time I add more money to my investment or savings fund, I feel like I'm getting a little closer to that dream. The feeling of victory, even small, is a huge motivation for me to keep going. I'm no longer afraid when facing bills or financial decisions. because now I know I have the ability to overcome any difficulty. What I've gone through has not only changed my financial situation, but also changed the way I view life. I've learned that, no matter what happens, I can always rebuild from the ground up and take control of my life. I know there's still much to learn and many challenges ahead, but right now, I can be proud of what I've achieved. I've not only won the financial battle, but also won the battle in my own life. And with this belief, I can continue confidently toward even bigger goals in the future. After beginning to stabilize my financial life and feeling the positive changes, I realized that if I wanted to maintain and grow my finances, I needed to start thinking about long-term plans. In the past, I lived day by day with short-term financial decisions, which helped me get through immediate challenges. However, after rebuilding from scratch, I understood that I couldn't keep living that way. I needed a long-term strategy to ensure financial stability and independence, especially as I get older. At first, I felt anxious about making long-term plans. My past life had left me lacking in many financial areas, and I didn't know how to invest wisely with the small amount of money I had. But I also understood that without a plan, I would remain in an unstable situation. I decided to start with simple steps, learning about index funds, safe investment options, and long-term saving methods that I could maintain. The first thing I did was meet with a financial advisor. I needed someone with experience to help me build a reasonable strategy and avoid unnecessary mistakes. The financial advisor helped me understand different types of assets to invest in, how to allocate my investment portfolio according to my financial goals. Although the initial steps were difficult, I gradually began to feel more confident in making decisions. One of the most important aspects of my long-term plan was building a retirement fund. In the past, I didn't focus on this because I thought I would always have a stable job. However, after experiencing some major shocks in life, I realized that I couldn't always rely on a job to secure my financial future. I started investing in an IRA retirement fund, and each month I contributed a small amount. Although the money wasn't substantial, I knew that if I kept up this habit, it would gradually build a meaningful amount for the future. As part of my long-term plan, I also started thinking about buying a house again. I had to sell my home before and settle for living in a small apartment. But now, with the savings I had gradually accumulated, I dreamed of owning a small beachfront home where I could live peacefully in my later years. Although I knew buying a house wouldn't be easy, I felt that having a specific goal helped keep me motivated every day. Creating a long-term financial plan was not an easy task. But after the tough years, I realized that this was the crucial step to ensuring a stable and free future. The things I learned throughout this journey changed how I viewed money and life. And I knew that if I continued to persevere, I would gradually achieve my bigger goals, even though the road ahead was long. Even though I had made some progress in improving my financial situation, the road ahead was not always paved with roses. The journey to financial freedom wasn't always smooth. Every time I thought I had everything under control, new challenges arose to test my patience. That's when I realized that even though I had made long-term plans and was saving strictly, life could still throw unexpected surprises my way. One of the biggest challenges I faced was maintaining motivation during tough times. Life is constantly changing, and I couldn't control every situation. There were months when I encountered unexpected expenses, an unplanned medical cost or unavoidable home repairs. During those times, it felt like all my efforts were about to fall apart. Feelings of discouragement began to creep in. Is it worth it? Can I do this? These questions kept popping up in my mind. However, I began to realize that every challenge I encountered was an important lesson. Facing obstacles, I learned that perseverance and patience were the most crucial elements to overcoming them all. When things got tough, I didn't allow myself to stop. Instead of feeling discouraged, I viewed the situation more realistically. Not everything would be perfect right away, but every small step was still a success. The important thing was to keep moving forward, no matter how rough the road. One of the factors that helped me maintain motivation was reminding myself of the big goals I had set. Whenever I felt tired or disheartened, I would remember the beachfront house I had always dreamed of. I would imagine sitting on the porch, looking out at the ocean, feeling the cool breeze on my face. A sense of freedom I had always longed for. This reminder of my long-term goal helped me get through many small challenges and not let them hold me back. Additionally, I started finding ways to share my difficulties with friends in my financial support community. When I felt like I was failing, sharing with my companions helped me feel less alone. These people didn't just offer useful advice, but also showed me that no one is walking this journey alone. We supported each other, encouraged each other through each difficult phase. This connection helped me stay motivated and not give up. Ultimately, I realized that there is no easy path to financial freedom. My journey has been filled with challenges, but it was these challenges that taught me perseverance and determination. Each time I overcame a hardship, I felt myself growing stronger. And when I look back at all that I've accomplished, I realize that the joy of victory doesn't just come from achieving financial goals, but from the growth of my spirit and resilience. Looking back on my financial journey, I can't help but feel proud of what I've achieved. The months of struggle and financial worry are now in the past. Although I don't have a huge savings account or a luxury mansion, I feel I have something far more important: freedom. Freedom is not about how much money you have, but the ability to control your life and no longer be overwhelmed by financial pressure every day. One of the biggest changes in my life after achieving financial stability is the sense of peace. Before, every time I saw a bill or heard about unexpected expenses, it felt like a weight on my shoulders. But now I no longer feel that anxiety. Even though there are months when I only save a small amount, I know it's contributing to my financial security for the future. Most importantly, I no longer fear aging or not being able to work. Now I can look ahead without worrying about finances. What's even better is that I can now live the life I've always wanted. Smart financial decisions have allowed me to achieve financial independence, and now I can spend time on what matters more: enjoying life. I've been able to fulfill small dreams that were once distant desires, such as spending more time with family and friends or traveling to places I've always wanted to visit. One of the biggest decisions in my financial freedom journey has been taking time to rest and rediscover myself. After years of living in financial and work stress, I can now stop and truly listen to myself. I don't have to rush after short-term goals anymore. Instead, I'm taking time to learn new skills, read books, and even try activities I never thought I'd do, like taking courses on after rebuilding my personal finances and establishing a stable foundation. I began to realize that I was no longer just focused on my initial goals. The changes in my financial life not only gave me peace of mind about money, but also opened up new opportunities that I had never considered before. Like many others, I had spent most of my life focused on work, family responsibilities, and sometimes forgot that life had much more to offer. Now, no longer bound by financial worries, I started to explore opportunities one had never had the chance to consider before. One of the first opportunities one explored was investing in myself. Before, I didn't have the time or money to pursue the hobbies and passions I had put aside. Now, I could sign up for courses in finance, life skills, and even areas I always wanted to explore, like art or photography. These classes not only helped me expand my knowledge, but also broaden my perspective on new things in life. Every day, I felt myself growing and gaining more confidence in my abilities. Not stopping there, I began to reassess my career. Although I no longer needed to work to survive, I realized that work was still an important part of life. But instead of working just for money, I began searching for opportunities to work in areas I'm passionate about and where I could add value to the community. I decided to start a small project I had always dreamed of, a blog sharing my financial experiences and money management tips. This project not only allowed me to continue growing my career, but also gave me the chance to help others facing similar challenges I had overcome. I realized that in times of crisis, seeking opportunities to help others was not only a way to overcome hardship, but also a way to feel more fulfilled and meaningful. In particular, I also began to reconsider investment opportunities one had never thought about before. After learning and gathering information from various sources, I decided to try investing in real estate, an area I had once considered too complicated and risky. With advice from experts and the experience I had gained, I found a few viable investment opportunities. These investments not only provided passive income but also gave me a real sense of financial freedom, knowing these returns would continue to grow in the future. Every new opportunity one explored brought with it a sense of excitement and novelty. However, I was also aware that not all opportunities are easy. Every decision, whether big or small, required me to be persistent and keep learning. But I was no longer afraid. After everything I had gone through, I knew I was capable of facing any challenge, as long as I was ready to learn and move forward. Exploring new opportunities wasn't just about finance. It was also about rediscovering myself. And the most important thing I learned during this process is, when you're no longer bound by financial worries, you're free to pursue and embrace the opportunities life offers, and you can also inspire those around you. Every time I seized a new opportunity, I felt myself becoming stronger and more confident. Looking at my life after achieving financial stability, I realized that the journey doesn't just end with seeking financial freedom in the present. The more important task is to build a sustainable foundation, not only for myself but also for future generations. I began to realize that finance isn't just about earning money today. It's about how we create a lasting financial legacy for the future. One of the biggest decisions I made was to invest in financial education for my children. I knew that as they grew up, they would face their own financial challenges, and I wanted to equip them with the necessary knowledge to manage money wisely. I started teaching them lessons on saving, investing, and managing debt. Rather than just focusing on leaving them assets, I realized that the more important gift was giving them the ability to be financially independent. Teaching them the value of money, how to save for the future, and how to invest in themselves was an invaluable gift I could give them. In addition, I began to think about setting up a long-term retirement fund for myself. Although I already had a basic retirement fund, I realized that to live comfortably in my later years, I needed to continue investing and expanding that fund. I looked into index funds and other types of safe investments that offered steady returns over time. Gradually, I understood how to optimize my investments to grow without taking on too much risk. These decisions not only gave me peace of mind about my future, but also helped me build a sustainable asset base that could support me when I no longer had the ability to work. A key part of building a long-term financial foundation was creating a reasonable spending plan. Before, when I was financially struggling, I would spend impulsively and not think about saving for the future. But now, I understood that in order to create a solid foundation, I needed a clear spending strategy. I began cutting unnecessary expenses and instead focused on saving for long-term goals. This didn't mean I couldn't enjoy life, but I learned how to spend in a more planned and mindful way. With every decision I made, I felt like I was building a financial foundation not only for myself but also for those around me. I started to feel the stability and reassurance of knowing that I was doing the right things to ensure a sustainable future. This not only made me more confident in my current life but also created a sense of security for future generations. Building a solid financial foundation is not something that can be accomplished overnight, but with every small step, I'm getting closer to creating a life that is both stable and hopeful for the future. Looking back at my financial journey, I not only feel proud of what I've achieved, but also of the lessons I've learned along the way. Life isn't always smooth sailing, and I've certainly gone through difficult times, but those challenges are what helped me grow and better understand myself. And now, when I look back, I see that the joy isn't just about reaching financial goals. It's about the personal growth and resilience I've gained. What makes me the happiest when looking back on my financial journey is not that I can pay off my debts or save enough for retirement, but the process of growth and financial independence I have gone through. There were days when I felt hopeless, thinking that I could never overcome the financial difficulties I was facing. But every time I look back, I realize that those moments helped me change the way I view money and life. I learned to see money not just as a tool for achieving material goals, but as a means to bring real freedom and happiness. It was a transformation from living in fear and anxiety about money to using money as a tool to live a freer, more meaningful life. What makes me happiest when reflecting on my financial journey is the shift in my perception of wealth. I used to think that having money and assets was the ultimate goal in life. But now, I realize that true wealth is not measured by the amount of money in my bank account or the value of the assets I own. Real wealth is when I can do the things I love without worrying about money. It's when I can help others and inspire those who are facing the same difficulties I once did. And most importantly, it's when I can live my life the way I want, without being bound by financial worries. Another thing I've learned is the value of patience. Financial stability is not something that changes overnight. It's a long process, full of challenges but also incredibly rewarding. Building stable and sustainable finances isn't always easy, but when you achieve it, you feel a deep sense of satisfaction. I now understand that my financial journey is an adventure, and every step brings valuable lessons. Looking back, I realize that life is not about the goals I achieve, but about what I experience along the way. The relationships I've built, the people I've met, and the lessons I've learned throughout my financial journey have all contributed to the life I have today. I no longer view life through the lens of what I lack, but from the perspective of abundance, finding joy in taking control of my own life. When I think about the future, I no longer feel fear. I have built a solid financial foundation, but more importantly, I have found joy in the process of building my life. And that is what makes me feel the most fulfilled and happy. Looking ahead, I see not only a promising future but also a continuous journey of growth. After overcoming many financial difficulties and challenges over the years, I've realized that my biggest goal is not to be the wealthiest person, but to live a life that is financially independent and free. This is a concept that not everyone understands, but after everything I've been through, I've learned that financial freedom is not just about having enough money to not worry, but about the ability to do what I love without financial pressure. To achieve this, I had to change my perspective on money and the value of life. In the past, I viewed money as the end goal, the only tool to live a better life. But now I realize that money is not everything. What matters is that I can use money to create freedom for myself. Freedom in choosing my work, freedom in deciding my time, and freedom in spending time with the people I love. When I achieve financial freedom, I no longer feel constrained, but I feel like I can take control of my life. One of the important goals I am working towards is maintaining financial stability throughout my life. To do this, I started developing passive income sources. I understand that in today's financial world, having only one source of income is no longer enough. Instead, I began looking for investment opportunities, from real estate to index funds, and other financial tools that can generate regular income without requiring me to constantly work. Building passive income not only helps protect my finances, but also gives me more time to enjoy life. Equally important is the continuous learning and improvement of my financial knowledge. Although I've achieved success in managing my personal finances, I know that the financial world is always changing, and if I don't keep learning, I might miss out on new opportunities. So, I still spend time researching new financial trends, attending courses and seminars to expand my knowledge. Only by continuing to learn and grow can I maintain the financial freedom I have achieved. Pursuing a financially free future is not an easy journey, but what gives me peace of mind is that I am ready for any challenges ahead. I know I have enough knowledge, determination, and patience to overcome any obstacles. Moreover, I've realized that financial freedom is not a destination but a continuous process. Every step I take, every decision I make, contributes to building a stable and freer future. Finally, I believe that financial freedom is not just about monetary freedom, but about freedom in how I live, how I spend my time, and how I decide my life. That is what makes me feel fulfilled and proud. And more importantly, that is what I want to pass on to the next generation. A generation that can live the life they want without worrying about money, a generation that can live freely and proactively. One of the most important parts of this financial journey is the ability to create a positive impact not only for myself but also for those around me. After going through hardships and failures, I've realized that true success is not only measured by the money in my bank account but by the ability to change and improve the lives of the people I love. And this, for me, is the greatest reward. As I began to achieve financial stability, I didn't keep my success secrets to myself. Instead, I decided to share the lessons and experiences I have learned with my loved ones and friends. I began hosting personal finance sharing sessions, helping those who were struggling financially find ways to improve their situations. We discussed saving, investing, and planning for the future. Seeing my friends change their financial mindset, from worrying about money to becoming more confident and proactive, is an incredible feeling. One of the things I've learned on this journey is that true wealth is not just money, but also the act of sharing and creating value for the community. I've realized that when I help others achieve their financial goals, I also create a positive cycle. The people I've helped not only feel grateful but also want to continue helping others. And so, a united and strong community begins to form, where people support and uplift each other financially. This also led me to another important realization. Finance is not a private matter. While managing personal finances is a crucial part of achieving stability, I've realized that sharing and learning about finances together allows everyone to develop and live a better life. We cannot live alone in this financial world. We must help each other and learn from each other to create positive change in the community. I started organizing both in-person and online meetings where people could share their stories, from struggles to successes, and I provided them with simple but effective financial tools and strategies. One of the things I always emphasize in these sessions is smart saving and investing. I have helped my friends learn how to build an emergency fund, plan for retirement, and allocate their assets wisely. I find joy in watching them make progress and achieve their financial goals. The feeling of seeing my loved ones and those around me change their lives, overcome financial difficulties, and achieve financial freedom is truly a reward that cannot be measured by money. It makes me feel that I am not only living for myself but also creating a positive impact on society. I believe that sharing financial knowledge not only brings change to someone's life, but also creates a ripple effect of change within the community. And throughout this journey, I have realized that each time I help someone, I am also helping myself become a better person. Financial freedom is not just about personal freedom, but also the freedom to bring value to others. Looking back on my journey, I want to offer sincere advice to anyone who feels lost in their financial life, especially those in their middle age. Life sometimes makes us feel like it's too late, that we've missed the chance to build a solid financial foundation, to have a stable and free future. But I want to tell you that no matter where you are on your financial journey, never let yourself feel hopeless. You can always start over. Every step you take, every decision you make today can change your future. If you feel like it's too late, remember, it's never too late to change. I started over from scratch at the age of 60, after a major life shock. I lost my home, lost my assets, and had to split everything I had accumulated over a lifetime. But at that moment, I decided I didn't want the past to determine my future. I started learning about finances again, began saving even the smallest amounts, and sought reasonable investment opportunities. And you know what? Those small steps led me to a new life, a life I never imagined I would have. The most important thing I want to emphasize is, start with small things. There's no need to rush or be overly ambitious. You can start with a small savings fund, invest in an index fund, or simply cut unnecessary expenses to save. No matter how you start, the important thing is that you start now. Finance is not a race. It's a long journey. Every decision you make today will have a significant impact on your future. Remember that financial freedom is not something you can achieve overnight. It requires patience, continuous effort, and the ability to overcome challenges. But if you persevere, if you can learn from your mistakes, you will see that you can achieve more than you think. Financial freedom doesn't just come from having a lot of money, but from the ability to take control of your life without being bound by finances. I understand that for many, especially those past middle age, starting over can be a huge challenge. But I believe that if you are determined and don't give up, you will find your own path. You will not only rebuild your finances, but also rebuild your life. Don't let fear hold you back. Start with one small step today, and gradually you will see the change. Finally, I want you to remember that everyone has the right to decide their future. Life doesn't always go according to plan, but we always have the power to change and start over. Never think that it's too late to change because, in reality, every day is a new opportunity to change and improve your life.